In the fall of 2019, Hannah Keller, a 20-year-old college student at a quiet liberal arts college in Vermont, began experiencing something strange, something that didn't feel like an ordinary nightmare. It began with a dream that would repeat itself every night with disturbing precision. She stood in a narrow hallway lined with flickering lights, the air cold and stale, like an old attic. At the end of this hallway was a door, its paint peeling and red. A red so dark it looked like dried blood. No matter how much she wanted to turn away, something pulled her toward it. Behind the door, a girl sat motionless in a chair in the corner of a colorless room. The walls weren't just red, they were soaked, as if the paint had been mixed with iron and despair. The girl never moved, except for her trembling shoulders and the faint motion of her lips. She whispered something constantly, but the words never reached Hannah's ears. Each night, the dream repeated, but each time, the girl turned her head a little more, revealing more of her battered, tear-streaked face. Her hollow eyes seemed to reach out, screaming silently for attention. By the fifth night, the dream became unbearable. This time, the girl didn't just turn. She stared directly at Hannah, her jaw quivering, blood smearing her cheek. With her lips slowly parting, she mouthed a single chilling word. "Help." Hannah woke up screaming, drenched in sweat. She couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't just a nightmare. It felt like a memory that didn't belong to her. She tried to laugh it off with her roommate, Lena, who joked it was probably just midterm stress. But something about Lena's eyes, the way she looked at the dorm room's red bulletin board that morning, Hannah couldn't shake a sense of growing dread. 3 days later, Lena vanished. No warning, no note. Her side of the dorm was untouched, phone on the nightstand, coat still hanging by the door. Hannah reported it immediately, and the police launched a campus-wide search. Flyers were posted, friends panicked, but there were no leads, no sightings. It was as if Lena had been swallowed whole. And then, things got worse. Late one night, as Hannah returned to her room after a campus safety escort, she found a note slipped under her door. It was written in thick red ink. "Red Room." That was all it said. No signature, no explanation. Just 2 words that struck Hannah like a cold slap. Terrified, she told campus security, but they dismissed it as a cruel prank. But Hannah knew. She recognized the handwriting. It was Lena's. Fueled by dread and a gut feeling she couldn't explain, Hannah returned to her dreams. She purposely stayed awake for nearly 48 hours and then allowed herself to fall asleep. The Red Room returned instantly. Only this time, she walked into the room. The air smelled of rot and rust. The girl's whispering stopped. Hannah reached out. The moment she touched her shoulder, the girl screamed so violently that Hannah jolted awake, her ears ringing. Suddenly, everything clicked. There was an old maintenance building behind the east parking lot, boarded up for decades. Rumor had it that it once housed psychiatric patients when the school was still affiliated with a nearby institution. Most students dismissed it as urban legend. Hannah didn't. She grabbed a flashlight and snuck out that night. The old building loomed like a corpse in the moonlight. The boards came off easier than expected. Inside, she wandered through cobwebs and dust, her footsteps echoing on the creaky wooden floor. Then, she saw it. A trap door under a collapsed cabinet. Something was painted on it, a symbol, and the word, "Listen." Her hands trembled as she pried it open. A wave of rot and cold air hit her like a wall. Below, in the pitch-dark basement, she found her. Lena, bruised, bound, and barely breathing, was curled in the corner of a room painted red, just like the dream. The walls were a mixture of rusted paint, blood, and something unidentifiable. But worst of all, Lena was whispering, not to herself, to Hannah. When police arrived minutes later, called from Hannah's frantic, gasping phone call, they found Lena in a state of shock. When she was finally carried out and safe in the ambulance, her eyes fluttered open. She stared directly at Hannah and rasped, "She heard me!" To this day, no one knows who abducted Lena or how her whispers reached Hannah's dreams. The building has since been demolished by the school, quietly, with no media coverage. But Hannah never slept the same again, because even now, on some nights, she dreams of other rooms, and in each one, someone is whispering, asking her to help. Marcus had never believed in the supernatural. A 44-year-old trucker from rural Texas, he lived alone in a small, weathered house that sat on the edge of a pinewood thicket. Life was quiet, predictable. Long halls, greasy diners, AM radio, and nights spent in peaceful solitude, just the way he liked it. But that winter, December 2022, something changed. One night, after returning home from a brutal cross-state delivery run, Marcus collapsed into bed without dinner. Exhaustion swallowed him whole. That was the night he had the dream. In it, Marcus stood barefoot at the end of his own hallway, staring down the dim, narrow corridor that led to the front of the house. The lights overhead buzzed and flickered, casting the space in disjointed pulses of shadow and light. Then he saw him. A tall man, unnaturally tall, emerged from the far shadows. He was drenched, water dripping steadily from the hem of a tattered trench coat. His face was wrong, stretched, pale, and sagging like wet paper, with black pits for eyes and a mouth that split too wide across his face. He raised one bony finger and pointed directly at Marcus. The dream shifted into something primal. The scream came next, long, shrill, and inhuman, not just loud, but inside Marcus's skull, vibrating in his bones. And then, without warning, the man lunged. Marcus woke up screaming and soaked in sweat, heart pounding. He sat upright in bed, gasping for breath. He chalked it up to exhaustion, maybe a stress dream, nothing more. But something about it lingered, a foul taste in the air, a sense of being watched. He tried to sleep again, but couldn't. Hours passed. Around 3:02 a.m., he decided to get up for a glass of water. The house was silent, except for the low hum of the fridge and the creaks of old wood settling in the cold. He made his way through the living room, and as he turned the corner into the hallway, his stomach dropped. The overhead light flickered, exactly like in the dream. He froze, heart beginning to hammer again. Coincidence, he muttered, forcing himself forward. Then he saw them. Wet footprints, human, barefoot, fresh. They began at the front door, continued across the hardwood floor, and ended right where the dream man had stood in his nightmare. Marcus stood motionless, eyes wide, cold sweat trickling down his spine. He hadn't been outside. There had been no rain that night. He lived alone. The door was still locked. And yet, the prints glistened as if the intruder had just walked in and vanished. He backed away slowly, heart thundering, until his back hit the wall. He stayed there, trembling, until the sky outside began to lighten with dawn. The hallway remained dry the next day. No prints, no signs of entry, nothing to explain it. Marcus tried to move on, told himself it had to be a dream layered onto sleepwalking, some trick of the mind. But that wasn't the end. Every few weeks since, usually around 3 a.m., the hallway light will flicker. Once, the bulb exploded outright. Another time, the power surged, and his phone camera turned on by itself, pointed toward the hallway, recording. He never found a video. And though Marcus has never seen the pale man again, he still hears things. Wet, dragging sounds, scraping footsteps just beyond the edge of light. And once, just once, he swore he heard that scream again. But this time, it wasn't in a dream. These days, Marcus won't walk that hallway at night. He avoids looking down it, even in the mirror. Friends joke that he's gotten superstitious in his old age. He just shrugs, because he knows the truth. Some things follow you out of dreams, and they don't always leave. Tasha had always shared a special bond with her grandmother, Lola Maria, who was not only the matriarch of the family, but a deeply spiritual woman steeped in ancient Filipino folklore. Growing up, Tasha would sit at her Lola's feet, wide-eyed, as she spoke in hushed tones about spirits that wandered between the worlds, omens that came in sleep, and the unspoken rules of dreams. One story haunted Tasha more than the others. If you dream of digging and find bones, Lola warned, it means something buried, truth, guilt, or a soul, wants to rise. In 2020, Lola Maria passed away in her sleep. The family mourned deeply, but none more than Tasha, who felt like part of her soul had been ripped away. That's when the dreams began. They always started the same. Tasha was standing in her childhood bedroom, the one in their old family home that had been abandoned for years. Everything was exactly as she remembered. The dusty pink curtains, the cracked mirror on the wall, and the old wooden floor with its faint creaks. But in the dream, there was a sound, scratching, coming from beneath her bed. She would fall to her knees, compelled, and begin to dig at the floorboards. Her fingers worked on their own, clawing and peeling the rotted wood. Then she would find it, a decaying skeleton, curled like a child beneath the floor, its empty eye sockets staring up through the gloom. As she looked closer, the jaw would unhinge and whisper her name, a rasping moan from a throat long turned to dust. Each time she awoke from the nightmare, her hands were shaking, her fingernails were blackened with dirt. One night, she found splinters beneath her skin. At first, she thought she was losing her mind. Sleep paralysis? Grief? But then, the scratching sound came while she was awake. Faint, almost imperceptible, coming from the floor of her apartment. It was then that she remembered her grandmother's warning. Some dreams are not dreams, they are calls. Driven by a growing dread, she returned to the old home. The house was falling apart, its roof sagging, vines crawling over broken windows. Her old bedroom was exactly as in the dream, musty, silent. But the floor, that same spot beneath the bed, felt colder. Her breath caught in her throat as she pried at the wood. It came up more easily than it should have, as though it had already been disturbed. No body, but there was a box. An old, rusted tin with a lock that had long since corroded. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside, black and white photographs, all with one man scratched out. Antique coins from the 1950s, and a torn leather-bound journal, her grandmother's. She flipped through the pages. At first they were mundane, grocery lists, prayers, dreams. But then, the ink grew darker, more frantic, rambling confessions. They never found Ramon. My heart tells me he is still here. Your grandfather said it was an accident, but why won't he let me talk about it? Sometimes I hear scratching under the floor. I tell myself it's rats, but the scratching comes only after I dream of Ramon. He should have never buried the truth under our home. Tasha's blood turned to ice. Ramon, her missing uncle, the one everyone said ran away after an argument, the one whose name was erased from every photo. The box trembled in her hands. For a moment, she thought it was just her nerves. But then she felt it, a thump beneath her feet. A slow, deliberate knock from under the house. She dropped the box and fled. Later that night, back in her apartment, she sat awake until dawn. The dreams had stopped. But now, when the night is quietest, she sometimes hears the sound again, not from beneath her bed, but from the walls, scratching, whispering, her name. No body was found, but something was uncovered that day, something deeper than bones. And in the shadows of that old house, the truth waits to be fully exhumed.